And your argument is that the king is captured
Yes.
by the Praetorian Guards, i.e., the security.
Yes.
Okay, which would be MI5, MI6.
MI5, MI6, who are controlled by whom? Foreigners.
There is a perjury of an oath, and a number of monarchs have done it in the past. One of them lost his head for doing it. The direct answer is the king has perjured his oath. As far as I can see, he could never redeem what he's done. If you read the Bill of Rights, it tells you that the king was advised by evil counsellors. In other words, it's history repeating itself.
In the last week or so, King Charles has announced that he is now the defender of all faiths, not just the Christian faith, not just the Protestant faith. What are these changes about? Ian, I'm going to come to you first. By the way, both of you, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I'll have the links in the description below where people can find you. Ian Burlingame, ex-Special Forces, Graham Moore, head of the English Constitution Party, and a common law lawyer. So, Ian, what does all this mean?
The Praetorian regime that owns the security for the crown and most all luminaries in the system of the United Kingdom is moving to sideline, minimize, remove the crown as a threat against it. Because were the people in the crown to come together, it's an immensely powerful force to remove all of this unconstitutionality, all this illegality, all of the assumption of total and absolute control of the English-speaking peoples, minus the United States, although they're trying it here too, right? So, 40% of the power, and this is not literal, but, analog, about 40% of the power of the English peoples to defend, support, protect their ways of life is the crown, at least as things are constituted now. And so the enemies who are, for all intents and purposes, consolidating their complete control, assumption of control and power of the United Kingdom and portions of the Commonwealth are moving to isolate, delegitimize, vilify, reduce the power of the persons who wear the crown so as they don't have to deal with the power of the crown with the people behind it.
Right. And then what you're saying is consistent with other moves that this government have taken, Keir Starmer's government, in getting rid of all the hereditary peers, which is
Correct.
something Tony Blair started. And
Correct.
I think
Creation of the Supreme Court, all of it.
yeah,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
Burnham's talking about replacing the House of Lords with an elected
Elect,
body,
which is what
which
they have now, because what they do is they electively elevate artificial peers, and then
yeah,
they put them into this art, this fake House of Lords. They don't want to end the system that is because they benefit immensely from it, and they've spent centuries, again, controlling the crown with the threat of murder and violence, which they exercise and carry out at times. They don't want to remove the system; they benefit from it. And the
yeah.
last thing they want is for the system to reset itself. So they're going to do what they can to put all of this on the crown, to delegitimize the crown and slowly, steadily pull the crown out of it before the people go and seize the crown for themselves.
Yep. And your argument is that the king is captured
Yes,
by the Praetorian Guards, i.e., the security.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
which would be MI5, MI6, and special
MI5,
branch.
MI6, who are controlled by whom? Foreigners.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Graham, how do you see this? Why is the king now the defender of all faiths? Why is the Buckingham
So,
Palace not going to be a residency for the monarch?
the Buckingham Palace element, I'm not too concerned with, because you've got Windsor Castle, you've got other residencies. They've got two private residencies, which they borrowed the money from the Rothschilds to buy those residencies, right? And that goes back to, I think it was Queen Victoria. But the main point. So the residency element, I'm not. Buckingham Palace is just Buckingham Palace. It's a bit like, they can be anywhere they want to be within reason. But Windsor Castle has always been the home of kings and queens in England for many, 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 many
1,000
centuries.
years. Yeah.
So that part side of it, I'm not too worried about. But getting back to the oath situation, and saying that he is the defender of multi-faith or all faith, that in English law and the common law, that's known as perjury, right? So I'm not talking about perjury as in standing in a court of law and telling lies when you're giving evidence.
Perjuring your oath. Yeah.
There is a perjury of an oath, and for the monarch to do that, and a number of monarchs have done it in the past. One of them lost his head for doing it. There's been two others, maybe three others, that have perjured their oaths. And one of the kings, I mean, there's a really great article that was written in 2012 from someone who deep dived the history of it, and then they went and showed you what not only what the king that perjured his oath said, and basically said he apologized to the people because allegiance. So this is all about the overall thing. Is this about allegiance, right? So in America, the allegiance is to the Constitution and to the flag, right? Where in England, it isn't to a flag, or in Britain, it isn't to a flag because it's regarded in the common law that that's an innate object, right? So that they wouldn't take that type of allegiance. But the allegiance it is the king to the people or to the subjects, and the subjects to the king. The king, in doing what he's done, has perjured his oath, and because of that, and again, this was settled in the Glorious Revolution. The people come together with the peers. There was 13 peers. There were 43 of us, if you like, as representatives of the people in the Commons. There was no king. And the debate at the time was between the Lords and the Commons. And the debate was this: did he abscond, which us commoners were saying that he absconded, and therefore he's lost the crown, and the peers, who are the peers of the king, right? They're not commoners. They said, no, he's abdicated, right? And the reason he's abdicated is because of what he's done. So in other words, they both then agreed the word we are going to use is abdicated, not absconded. And the second thing is we're all of the agreement, and this is what the Glorious Revolution solved as a problem. They was all of agreement that he had abdicated by deed. He had perjured his oath. He didn't have to write on a bit of paper a declaration that he was abdicating. He didn't have to declare it orally to both houses of Parliament. By his deed and the breach of trust and what he's actually done, and in this case is the Coronation Oath Act. From that situation in the Glorious Revolution, it get via the Crown and Parliament Recognition Act, via the English Bill of Rights, and most especially part of the Declaration, that then created this situation where there was a contract in law between the subjects of the realm of England, right? Not a British crown, that didn't exist, between the subjects of the realm of England in an English Parliament, and between us and the crown. And then so part of that Coronation Oath Act is that he is a defender of the faith and the gospel, and in particular it was a Protestant settlement, right? It was a major issue because we had been disarmed by Catholics in this country and a Catholic king who were massively abusing Protestants at the time. And when I say massively, there was a massive issue in Northern Ireland as well, right? So what happened was we had that settlement, and part of the Bill of Rights, for example, where the Americans get their Second Amendment, is from the English Bill of Rights, because we have got the right to keep and bear arms, and it was a pre-existing right. But in that document, and especially the Coronation Oath Act, which I have used in court in this country, and walked out of court, right? Because the judge said, if you want me to tell you the story, I'll tell you the story. But the basis of it is still law, and I have the right to petition the king or the queen at the time. So I was petitioning outside Buckingham Palace. 30 police officers come along and try and arrest me. And I've said, but it says it in the Bill of Rights that I have the right to petition the monarch. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So when it ended up in court in front of a judge, not a magistrate, a real judge, he said, what is your defence, Mr. Moore? And I held up a copy of the Coronation Oath Act, 1688, and the English Bill of Rights. I said, it's my constitutional right to petition a monarch. And no, and it's illegal to prosecute me or use any form of commitment against me. It is highly illegal under English constitutional law, right? And they accepted that. And I walked out of court. The whole point I'm trying to get at is Parliament keeps using Article 9, freedom of speech in Parliament, as part of the Bill of Rights. And again, what's backing that is the Coronation Oath Act. So King Charles has perjured his oath, and it's not the first time in English history it's happened, right? Mm-hmm. And we have always dealt with it in the past. And that's the whole point of it. We need to deal with it, get him out of the way. I am an anti-royalist. And the reason I'm an anti-royalist is because some of the things they've done in the past, they wanted an act of parliament created. They're not doing the work or the jobs. They're not doing the constitutional role anymore, right? Most of these prerogatives have been passed to Parliament, and all of that is unconstitutional. But they still want to hold their hand out for money from the people, so really and truthfully, the common law can give you a republic, and what that means is you take all of those prerogatives and you give them to a president. Exactly what they did in the United States of America with George Washington. I mean, they literally asked him, right? So the direct answer is the king has perjured his oath. As far as I can see, he could never redeem what he's done because he's the head of the Church of England, and he is the protector of the faith. And to do what he's done is highly unconstitutional. By the way, I've got documents on here from Hansard where they was having this discussion 15 years ago because they was talking about the king being so aligned with Islam. And they actually said in the committee, and it was a constitutional meeting and by the constitutional committee, and they said, you do realise that if he aligns with Islam, he abdicates the throne. So it's not just me saying it. Mm-hmm. Hansard said it. Everyone said it. You can't
I get it, Graham, because it's in the he swore an oath.
That's it.
When he became the king, he swore an oath that he's the head of the Church of England and to defend the faith.
You can't
the Protestant faith.
The oath. There's just to make sure, so your audience can go and find this document. It's a document. Well, it's not a document. It's an article, right? But it's really interesting. It's not that long. It is very well researched, and it explains how we come about the oath system, right? And why it operates in the way it does. And it's called the Oaths and Vows That Bind Our Society Together. And it's by a guy called David J. Webb. And it is the Libertarian Alliance. And that was actually written in 2012. I mean, I'm going through that tonight on my show after this one to explain to people what our Chief Justices said. There's 3 or 4 of them have all said the same thing, that if you perjure your oath, that's it. It's gone. You can't regain the honour. I mean, one king apologised and begged forgiveness off the people, but only because he was going to chop his head off.
Right. I mean, the king will have had legal counsel that surely would have told him, look, you're abdicating by deed if you go through with this.
Is that a question to me? Because I'll give you the answer.
Go on then.
Right. Well, the simple answer is, if you read the Bill of Rights and the preamble of the English Bill of Rights, it tells you that the king was advised by evil counsellors. In other words, it's history repeating itself.
Paid subscriptions are now live. Go to richdoespolitics.com to sign up, become a member of my community. And you also have the option to signing up for monthly Zoom calls that I will be leading. Links in the description below.
I have a fundamentally different take on it, right?
Okay.
All of this stuff is not real. It's all make-believe theater. The only real currency is violence. And the security for the crown has been maintained by Parliament since 1660. The crown does not control any bit of their security, particularly not since 1688 on. And so how many, you want to switch to a president system. How many presidents have actually operated in concert with the Constitution and gone against all the things that are happening here in the Americas, that we're on the verge of a bloody civil war again?
Mm.
How many presidents have been assassinated? How many of their own security have been complicit in that? To think, and then look at history. How many lords, how many kings, how many presidents, how many luminaries have been assassinated, or their family members, all the way back to Rome? The only currency is violence and your ability to use violence yourself to prevent violence against your person. So all of this other stuff is theater when it comes down to knives at the throat, quite willing and demonstrating quite willingness to murder at whim. And when it comes to a president or a crown, it isn't just the threat to the crown, the person of the crown, or the family, or the president, or the family of the president. It's the people. Credible threat to the people. As in, if you do not go along with this, we will unleash a wave of terrorist bombings in your country. And oh, by the way, MI6 is complicit in it, so you're not going to get them to stop it because the head of that is a Nazi. Oh, and the head of it, MI5 now, in the form of the Home Secretary, is most likely ISI connected.
And for people who do, because I've had this question a few times, ISI is the Pakistani intelligence service, which was actually created by the British, and it's a very competent,
Very
capable,
competent.
and ruthless intelligence
And
service.
global.
Oh, I didn't know
Right.
that.
So all of these other things are very important. But when it comes down to the utmost, where we are really in a genuine fight, they're all theater. The only reality is the violence and the willingness to commit murder on a mass scale. Well, prior to all of these things, because we have to look at the English-speaking people as a whole, because we all are as a whole the target. We have to take a step back before all of this stuff happened at all of the credible threats. One, there were terrorist bombings in our lifetimes in our countries and terrorist attacks. And then we have to look at all of the credible threats that were rolled out by MI6 messaging and CIA messaging, et cetera. Those weren't credible threats as in, hey, this infrastructure is here. It was a threat to anybody who might stand up against it. So to think that these people are somehow miraculously protected by their station and are not threatened with the threat of imminent violence against them and or the people that they are responsible is ludicrous. To think that somehow the magic of the courts and the Constitution protects against an assassin or a terrorist is ludicrous.
I don't get what you're.
They're under duress. They are operating under duress.
In the English law, right? A king that has perjured his oath. Listen, that king can go anywhere in the world and go and ask for help, and he hasn't done it. Right? That king is probably. We used to. I mean, what you may be referring to is what they used to call, in European terms, a dog king. Right? Well, that is exactly what it is.
What does that mean, Graham?
Dog king, hundreds of years ago, if one country conquered another with a king, it would get a dog, put it on the throne, put a crown on it, and put a robe around it, and then they would talk to the dog, and the dog would growl and bark. And the people who had conquered would then turn around to the people who have been conquered and say, your king commands this. It was a way of taking the mick out of the people to say that you've been conquered, and here is your dog king. Right. So they would translate what this dog was saying and then pass it on to the people and say that's what you're.
So this is not the bloody case at all here, Graham. This is not a Dong King situation. Go back to what I said previous. This whole system is dependent upon their capture of the crown, not as a dog, but at the illusion that the crown is operating and has the capacity to operate on its own. And with respect to the king can go anywhere in the world and ask for help. How's he going to do that? His security detail travels with him.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that the police are crown servants, which is what
No.
they are? That's what they swear an oath to.
They don't work for the crown. Who pays for them? The crown doesn't pay for them. Parliament
Right, well,
pays for them.
Let me tell you that now. They work directly for the crown. Their oath is to the crown, right? So since 1990, just under 2,000 English and Welsh have been murdered by those police, right?
Who pays, Graham? The police work for who pays for them. Again, not who on paper.
These
who pays for it?
Right. So since 1990 in England and Wales, and in particular England, there's been up to the maximum of 180 deaths in England by terrorists. Some of them were the IRA. Some of them were Islamic
MI5?
terrorists.
MI5, MI6?
All of it's MI5.
It probably was.
Yeah.
But my point is, the police have directly killed 5 times the amount of people, and they are crown servants.
They do not get paid by the crown, Graham. Nobody gets paid by the crown. The crown, again, Graham, there's this whole sophisticated, complex system, but all of it is dependent upon 2 things. One, who actually pays the bills? Who sustains the pensions, the payrolls, the promotions, the benefits? That's Parliament. That's been Parliament since the 1600s. The second piece is not the crown, Parliament. The second piece is who's the one willing to do the violence in the dark? That's not the crown. That's MI5, MI6, and their predecessors.
In the MI6 and MI5 are the bad guys. They most certainly
absolutely
are.
And they control the police.
What I'm telling you is this particular, and not just this one. Queen Elizabeth was exactly the same.
She was also held captive.
Well, so when you say captive, that the crown, the monarch, has perjured its oath and has no right to exist in its current form.
So you
hold on a second. Let me see if I can represent both positions, right? So my understanding in what you're saying is that that King Charles is captive. He is not a free agent, and he's held captive by his security detail, right? And it is literally, there's a knife to his throat, and if not to his throat, he's been threatened with,
or his family, or the English
his family, or the
people.
English people. You'll do this or else, right? Now, a few months ago, you sent me a link to a video by Jacob Rees-Mogg, who went through all these kings and queens of England, and there were very few where the transition from one monarch to the next was peaceful. There was lots of murders and assassinations and uncles taking over and other people not in the direct lineage becoming the monarch, right? So that supports that argument. And by the way, those who are watching this week, I posted a couple of videos by an English historian, John Hamer, one about the assassination of JFK and the other about the murder, I think, of the Princess of Wales.
Yes.
And who was behind that. So your argument is that the king is not a free agent because he's a prisoner, because he's reliant on his security detail, and his security detail get their power and their pay from Parliament.
Correct.
And therefore
this goes all the way back to the 1660s, when Parliament has been the sole purse strings since 1660.
Yep. And then your argument, Graham, as I understand it, is that the king nevertheless has these constitutional powers. He has this constitutional authority enshrined in English constitution that he can resort to and rely upon in order to assert his supremacy as the monarch.
With the people, though. He has to have the people constitutionally.
Yes.
I'm with Graham on this, but this gets to Graham's point. If I am holding the monarch, the crown, and I am concerned that the people in the crown might come together, I'm going to make sure, with the threat of violence against the people, that the king in various forms perjures his oath in certain ways to invalidate the king in case I need to use that.
Right. And then what we're dealing with is a really, I mean, I can go back to Tony Blair, but probably before that,
It's way
Graham,
before.
as
Yeah.
you as
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
both of you will know, but certainly in modern times, Tony Blair, the setting up of the Supreme Court, the opening of the borders for mass immigration,
The
then
gutting of the peerage.
the
Yeah.
getting rid of the house, hereditary peers, and now just having purely appointed House of Lords, all of that weak, and now the defender of all faiths, all of that weakens the English constitution and weakens
Yes.
the role and the power of the monarch and the constitutional protections.
For
The,
the
we- the
people.
weakening
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
weakening of England and the weakening, not necessarily, but directly, indirectly of the monarch, but certainly the weakening of the Parliament, where the Acts of Union of 1606, 1707, as soon as they brought in what's known as Roman law into
Yeah.
a common law jurisdiction, and
Yeah.
it then become controlled
Yeah.
by a group of people that we have banished a number of times from England called Jesuits. And the Jesuits are, and again, I've spoken about these
Yeah.
people quite a few
Yeah.
times. Everyone wants to talk about jihadists, they want to talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Jews, but they never talk about a major problem. And by the way, Jesuits have been banned from more countries in Europe and around the world than what the Jews have, right?
Yeah. The
So,
Jesuits are the Green Berets of the Catholic Church.
well, exactly. Well,
I notice
they,
they all begin with J, Jew,
they're the military
Jesuit,
arm of
and
the Catholic.
jihadi. They all
Yeah.
begin
Sorry,
with the letter J. Jew,
Yeah.
Jesuit, and jihadi.
the three
Minor
J's.
point. Yes, the three
Yeah,
JQ.
but
J's.
so the point is that this is some people have started to get this now, right? That prior to 1706, 1707, which was the Acts of Union, so it's brought
Yeah.
into domestic law. Prior to that, there was a treaty, and the treaty was fine because a treaty is between two sovereign states, meaning
Peers. Yeah.
Scotland and England.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then what they did was they made it domestic law, and then they forced it upon the subjects, both of Scotland and England. But in doing so, they dragged Roman law into a common law jurisdiction,
Yeah.
and that's what's always caused the problem. If you read the law books of 300 years ago, they tell you that over time, a common law jurisdiction, whether it is a constitutional monarchy or a constitutional republic, survives. But what doesn't survive is a Roman law jurisdiction, either as a republic or a monarchy,
Yes.
because of the type of legal system that it is.
Yes. Common versus civil. It happened here in the 1990s in the United States with I can't remember exactly what it is, forgive me the term, but we transitioned in the United States from peacekeeping to law enforcement it was Biden when he was in, I think, the Congress or the Senate that brought it forward, and then the Clintons who signed it in. We, for all intents and purposes in the United States, transitioned right before our very eyes from common law to civil law, from precedent to prescription,
Right.
right?
Okay. And Graham,
And I'm
could
with
you
you, Graham. I fundamentally agree with you.
could you
It's the
just
Jesuits that have been our enemy because they never forgave the Tudors for kicking them out of one of their wealthiest, income generating provinces.
So one part, and again, if you can see it, it's the exact same problem as England has got. Has been so where the Constitution from England was exported to the United States of America, and most of the setup of America is English, right?
Oh, yeah.
The problem has come in because of the way they have been making amendments, how they've made the amendments, and they have started to create a system of Roman law jurisdiction, which
Yes.
is lots and lots and lots and lots of laws, line by line, and they are interpreting it as Roman law instead of having a tiny law to say you are forbidden from doing this and do anything else you want, but just
Yes.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
And
that's what
they've done
civil
that.
law is, a list of prescription. These things you cannot do.
Yeah,
Common law is here's a few things you can't do, but here's how we even interpret those in these different situations. Because maybe this thing you can't do was something was absolutely necessary at the time. And common law allows for that. What is common law? Common law is distributed law. Civil law is centralized law. It's fiat, diktat.
Yeah,
Common law emerges from the people and breathes with the people. And the second, where they first, well, where they really went hard after common law is the removal of natural law from within it. And that's what allowed for this steady progression towards you know, civil law wearing common law as a skin suit.
I absolutely agree with what you've just said. Natural law is part of the common law, is part of the moral law that's passed
Yes.
to us from God, and reason and right, which is also part of the common law. The problem with Roman law, it doesn't operate in that way, and
No.
it has something called dersitude. And dersitude means that if you haven't used the law, let's say in 100 years, it is obsolete. Common law doesn't do that. If a judge and a saint and an instance, there's an old saying, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So if they find something that if a situation happened 1500 years ago and it's a similar situation, and you bring it up and you say this judge said that 1500 years ago, for continuity, they say we're applying that judgment, it fits, it's the same thing, and that law still stands. That's the common law. But Roman law is always seeking to change things.
So it can stay in control. So it can
So, yeah.
maintain
So
control.
I'm not disagreeing
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Roman law being so I'm not even, to be fair with you, I'm not even disagreeing that we could continue with a monarchy. I'm saying you can't continue with this monarchy.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but it's captured. What you have to do is so Graham, I am very much with the plight of the people. And as of right now, 40% of the people's firepower is off the table because of one thing, because vast amounts have been invested every minute of every day to make sure that the crown and the people are set against one another or completely isolated from one another, don't recognize the role of one another. That is done by making sure that the people never see the knives to the throat of the king, of the crown, of the family, but more specifically to the knife. How is that knife held? It's held by every once in a while doing some horrible shit to some English peoples, and the threat of doing more of that. That's how you keep a president, a monarch, etc., in control. It's the way American presidents have been kept in control, aside from assassinating them, shooting them, etc. Right? So I've said this before, march on the crown, hold the crown, make sure the crown is physically secure. At the same time, recognize that that's going to unleash terrorist attacks in your own country and probably, organize civil unrest. But the only way to break free is and Graham, I'm fundamentally with you. We must restore constitutionality here and there, and actually everywhere in, what is called the Anglosphere. We must restore constitutionality, but to do that, we must understand and accept that the security entities of all of our countries are all the same security entities. It's the intelligence, the internal and external intelligence agencies. And they have no problem assassinating people. They've been doing it all the time, including judges, including leading jurisprudence folks, etc. Jurisprudists, right?
So from the point of, so let me just make two.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely believe that MI6, MI5 nationally, but internationally MI6, they're a major issue.
Yes.
Right? They shouldn't be doing half of what they're doing.
Yes. And they control the police. Look at the schools that the leading officers and the people get promoted. The schools they go to all are associated with MI5, MI6, or Mossad, or CIA, or FBI, or it's all one big cabal, right? Terry, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Graham.
It is one big cabal. You're
Yeah.
totally right. I mean, so from the point of let's forget about King Charles for the minute, right? Talk about the actual. So it's a bit like, if you reverse the situation. One thing that I'm very careful of when I speak to Americans, especially when they understand the Constitution, is never to actually insult the presidential office.
Yes.
But the president himself can be a complete and utter plonker,
The
right?
person's a
Like
person.
Joe
Yeah,
Biden.
yeah,
But the
yeah. Yeah,
office itself
yeah.
should be highly respected
The
because
institution. Yeah,
it's the institution
yeah.
that people respect, not the person. It's a bit like
Yes.
why do you salute an officer? Because of what he wears on his shoulder, and it represents the people in America, or it represents the crown here. But you might think the man in the uniform is a complete and utter
Well, you might
plonker.
want to punch him in the face.
No,
Yeah.
exactly, right? So there's a difference with that. So again, I get asked these questions a lot about why don't we have a fully codified constitution? I've said, well, look at America. It's got a codified constitution and it's in trouble after 250 years. England's 1100 years old. It has a
Yeah.
common law constitution, and the judges are supposed to move and weave and duck and dive with it, but fractionally, right?
Yeah.
Not make so major changes that the
Well,
whole thing collapses.
the judiciary, the judges, and the House of Lords were supposed to be a bit in concert and in contestation, just like
Well,
our Senate and the judiciary here.
funny
But they
enough,
wind up.
there's there's a part of this. Let me see if I can find it because and I'll just read out part of this, or even show it if I can, part of
Yeah,
this
you can show
article.
it.
Because, and again, I mean, if you want to put this article out after you can, let me see if I can find. I'm trying to get it so it comes up on my screen. Ceremony arose in entire undoubtedly occasion attempt to argue and land the common law, statute law will fail. Right. It is in light that I refuse to accept the mere pagan right. So this is about the oath system, and this guy, there's three elements to it, but he actually talks about basically when they took, and they wasn't allowed to do this, when the Constitutional Reform Act of 2005, which was Tony Blair, they removed the judges or the law lords out of the Commons and put them into a separate area. They wasn't allowed to do that, right?
Yeah.
They basically breached the Constitution by doing it. They wasn't allowed to do it. But what this guy talks about in here, it says, let me see if I can find the actual polity where the Parliament, in other words, political elite.
Graham, why are you looking for that? They weren't allowed to do it because it's a violation of the Bill of Rights, which Parliament has no jurisdiction over. Is that why?
Yeah.
Parliament. So Parliament has no jurisdiction over the Bill of Rights for the simple reason when the Bill of Rights was enacted in 1688, it said 3 times forever and 1 time in this kingdom for all time to come. But it wasn't until, well, there's 2 elements they attacked, one in 1858 and then they attacked it again in 1948, 3 years after the Second World War, which is what I've said to people. We lost the Second World War, right?
Yes.
The Soviets won and infiltrated.
The Nazis won.
And then what they did was they threw this in to the mix and they never told anyone what they was doing. They buried it in legislation, and it was very cryptic. So, I mean, I found it. And when I looked at it and said, this is absolutely disgraceful what they've done, they have cryptically removed a part of a paragraph of the English Bill of Rights, which tells you can never change the English Bill of Rights. It is forever, right?
Yeah.
And they changed the top part and the bottom part, done it by stealth. And then the wording of that paragraph now looks like Parliament is sovereign when Parliament is not sovereign.
In fact, it's illegal. It's treason to call Parliament to call itself sovereign. It's treason.
No, it is treason. In fact, the law book here tells me it's called contempt of statute and contempt of sovereign, and it's still a common law offence in this country.
It's treason. It is quite literally treason. I mean, it's not legally, technically labeled that, but for all intents and purposes.
But
if I might, Graham, one thing, right? Just because they cut the top and bottom off doesn't mean they changed it. It means that they ignored it. The thing itself is still there and can be restored like that.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Right. But what has to happen is that what's happened starting under, in the time of Pym, right, all the way back in the 1630s, 1640s, is that Parliament has steadily at the control of Rome and others, Venice, Rome through Venice, etc., or Amsterdam, etc., Parliament has steadily assumed to itself all of the powers of sovereignty. And it's done it through the control of two things: the exchequer, money, who gets paid and how, and the second piece is the legal use of violence within the borders against, so the means by which to pay the elements that use violence, whether that's law enforcement or the military or intelligence. So that's the power, the real power. All these words and languages, all that can be undone in an instant once Parliament no longer has control of the purse strings and no longer has control through the purse strings of the use of violence.
Did you want me to share this?
Yeah, please.
Right.
You should
I'll
be able
tell
to
you
do that.
why, because your audience will be very interested, and so will EM in this article. It's so well researched, and the beauty of this is the guy that wrote it went and lived. When he first started out in life, he was a Marxist. He went and lived in China for 5 years, right? And then when he come back, he started to realise what was going on, and he is now. He lives in Southern Ireland, but the point of this document, it says, I'm going to get to the shaded part, but this is the last part of the document, article. Our constitution is gradually being updated by a series of new laws that violate the coronation oath and claim the right to eliminate English common law. The religious nature of oaths has been undermined. Jury trials have been restricted in scope, and statutes allowing majority verdicts to be returned also reveal the intention to remove the guarantees of liberty provided by juries. The new police oath to equality and the casual way in which all the key officers of state violate their oaths of office by supporting European jurisdiction over our laws kick away a few more pillars of the Constitution. And this is a bit highlighted. The installation of a Supreme Court, removing the judicial function of Parliament that provided an ultimate guarantee that traitors and other working against our society could be held accountable, is another important development. They knew exactly what they was doing.
They knew exactly what they're doing. And that parliament, we need to be careful, because in that parliament, primarily, not solely, they meant the House of Lords, the hereditary peers, who we would not have the common law today going all the way back to His Majesty Alfred were it not for the peers fighting for it.
So to get to your point, in 2002, there was an official petition under the Magna Carta of Article 61, legitimately by a barrister, by 25 of quorum of lords, who picked 4 lords. They went to the Queen in 2002 and handed that petition to the Queen, right? When they went back to the House of Lords, they had their passes removed and was locked out.
Wow.
Right. Now, this is your audience again can go and look this up. There's 2 articles in the Daily Telegraph, and they said there's nothing wrong with a Magna Carta. All you got to do is blow the dust off. Right.
That's right.
And then what they did from there was they started putting in lots and lots of these life peers. Right. Now they have removed the hereditary peers. The hereditary peers are the people that have skin in the game, going back centuries.
And the knowledge, that deep common knowledge run down these. Absolutely, I call them puff peers. They're just puffed up peers, right? They're blown into existence.
Well, quite a few of them are puff peers.
Well, I mean that too, right? It's a double entendre, right?
Oh, Graham.
In the English way, right? We make sure a word doesn't just mean one thing when we use it proper.
Yeah,
right?
no,
they are
correct.
puff peers.
So the answer. So let me get back to the situation with the monarch, right? What I'm saying to you is I can't stand these people. I don't. Whatever happens, whether they've been captured, not captured, whatever the situation is, they've lost the trust of the people and they will never regain it, right? There is an argument, and a strong argument, that the English system as a common law constitution, reinitiating the hereditary peers and going back to the initial and the first part of the Constitution, putting everything back in place, right? And that includes a monarchy, because stability comes from a person sitting at the top, as long as they're doing their job.
Yes.
If they're not doing
But to do their job,
problem.
the people have to provide their security,
I
not
agree.
Parliament, right?
Well,
The people.
So again, what people don't realize about militias, militias were for the king and
Yes.
for the people. They was nothing to do with Parliament.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
Parliament took away militias only in the 1950s, just after the
Yes.
Second World War,
Well,
and replaced it with a territorial army.
yeah. So so beautiful, Graham. Again, the only way any of this gets reset is that, and I don't know how this is done. It has to be done constitutionally. I know the mechanisms are in there because it's been done before. And I suspect it's this: march on the crown, hold the crown, force the crown to its obligation. Its obligation in this case is to dismiss the ministers, dissolve parliament, call for elections, because the king can't, crown. I don't want to say the king, but the crown can't just dissolve parliament without calling for elections, right? But go and then restore the peers in the transition, the hereditary peers in the transition, and have them focus on two things: restoration of parliament to constitutionality. And I mean hard constitutionality, and before all these bullshit things that were made up, so restore the top and the bottom of the Bill of Rights and go back to, okay. And then the second piece of it is, so restore constitutionality. The second one is restoring the judiciary, removing the Supreme Court and going back to the common law system and restoring
the
law, right? This piece that gets inside of there is the purse strings have to be recovered, and the purse strings have to go back to the crown.
Well, I would
with
make one
the oversight of the peers and the oversight of Parliament, right? The new Parliament. But as long as Parliament controls the purse strings, they will be the power.
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. One of the things that they've done in 1924 was they brought in something called pay as you earn, PAYE, which was a system of forced taxation.
Yeah.
And Parliament did that. Prior to that, we had a voluntary system. Right? So, but the other thing that I would do to correct the system so it is far less likely to happen in the future is to publicly hang traitors after trial, right? And we will also initiate drawing and quartering, and I'm volunteering for the job.
Okay, Graham.
Okay.
All the difficult, now you and I are of complete accord, and I said this earlier today. I am, as a Wallace, right, half Wallace, I hate to say this, but I'm actually all for hanging, drawing, and quartering, and moving parts of the body to different parts of the United Kingdom.
No, I
just
agree
to keep
entirely.
Right.
They did it for a reason.
Yes.
They did it for a reason.
Yes.
Okay, gentlemen.
It is there for a reason, to show people when you commit treason, you commit treason against our ancestors, the current population, and the future generations.
What is treason? Treason is betrayal. And betrayal is a thing that can never be forgiven. And because you can never trust that they will not betray you again if circumstances change.
Yes. Okay. Graham, Ian, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Great to have you back on again. Please join my paid subscriber community, because once a month I do a Zoom call with the paid subscribers. This is Rich and Ian and GM signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.